Hello, everybody. My name is Stone. Welcome back to Halo Contact Harvest. We are on Chapter 1. Last time we read the prologue. I could have done them in one, but the prologue was like almost 30 minutes on its own. And I'm not a big fan of reading for longer than like 45. So, anyway, Chapter 1. UNSC Shipping Lane near Epsilon Indy System, September 3rd, 2524. Horn of Plenty's navigation computer was an inexpensive part, certainly less expensive than the freighter's load, some 2,500 metric tons of fresh fruit, melons mainly, racked like billiard balls in large vacuum-sealed bins that divided its boxy cargo container into floor-to-ceiling rows. And the nav computer was an order of magnitude less expensive than the Horn of Plenty's most important component, the propulsion pod connected to the rear of the container by a powerful magnetic coupling. The bulbous pod was a tenth of the container's size, and at first glance it looked a little tacked on, like a tugboat nosing one of Earth's old seafaring supertankers out to sea. But whereas a tanker could sail under its own power once out of port, Horn of Plenty couldn't have gone anywhere without the pod's Shaw Fujikawa drive. Unlike the rocket engines of humanity's first space vehicles, Shaw Fujikawa drives didn't generate thrust. Instead, the devices created temporary rifts in the fabric of spacetime, opened passages in and out of a multidimensional domain known as slipstream space, or slip space for short. If one imagined the universe as a sheet of paper, slipspace was the same sheet of paper crumpled into a tight ball. Its creased and overlapping dimensions were prone to unpredictable temporal eddies, Discord moment, that often forced Shaw Fujikawa drives to abort a slip, bring their vessels back into the safety of the normal universe, thousands and sometimes millions of kilometers from their planned destination. A short intrasystem slip between two planets took less than an hour. A journey between star systems, many light years apart, took a few months. With sufficient fuel, a Shaw Fujikawa-equipped ship could traverse the volume of space containing all of humanity's colonized systems in less than a year. Indeed, without Tobias Shaw's and Wallace Fujikawa's late 23rd century invention, humanity would still be bottled up inside Earth's solar system. And for this reason, some modern historians have gone so far as to rank the slip space drive as humanity's most important invention, bar none. Practically speaking, the enduring brilliance of slip space drives was their reliability. The drive's basic design had changed very little over the years, and they rarely malfunctioned so long as they were properly maintained. Which was, of course, why Horn of Plenty had run into trouble. Rather than slipping all the way from Harvest to the next nearest colony, Madrigal, Horn of Plenty exited halfway between the two planets' systems, tore back into normal space at coordinates that could have easily been occupied by an asteroid or any other nasty incidental object. Before the ship's nav computer really knew what had happened, the freighter was in an end-over-end tumble, its propulsion pod jetting a plume of radioactive coolant. The UNSC's Department of Commercial Shipping, DCS, would later classify Horn of Plenty's drive failure as a slip termination preventable, or an STP for short. Though freighter captains, and there were still humans that did the job, had their own way of translating the acronym, screwing the pooch, which was at least as accurate as the official classification. Unlike a human captain, whose brain might have seized with the terror of unexpected deceleration from faster-than-light speed, Horn of Plenty's nav computer was perfectly composed as it fired a series of bursts from the propulsion pod's hydrazine maneuvering rockets, brought the crippled freighter to a stop before the torsion of its tumble sheared its propulsion pod from the cargo container. Crisis averted, the nav computer began a dispassionate damage assessment, and soon discovered the breakdown's cause. The pair of compact reactors fueling the Shaw Fujikawa drive had overflowed their shared waste containment system. The system had fault sensors, but these were long overdue for replacement and had failed when the reactor maxed power to initiate the slip. When the reactors overheated, the drive shut down, forcing Horn of Plenty's abrupt exit. It was a maintenance oversight, pure and simple, and the nav computer logged it as such. Had the nav computer possessed a fraction of the emotional intelligence of the so-called smart artificial intelligences, AI, required on larger UNSC vessels, it might have taken a moment to consider how much worse the accident could have been, wasted a few cycles enjoying what its human makers called relief. Instead, nestled in its small black housing in the propulsion pod's command cabin, the nav computer simply oriented the Horn of Plenty's maser so it pointed back toward Harvest, cued a distress signal, and settled in for what it knew would be a very long wait. When it would only take 2 weeks for the maser burst to reach Harvest. The nav computer knew Horn of Plenty wouldn't rate an expedited recovery. The truth was, the only part of the freighter worth a salvage fee was its slip space drive, and in its damaged state, there was no need to rush the drive's retrieval. Better to let the radioactive coolant plume disperse, even if that meant letting the cargo container's reactor-powered heating units fail, and its load of fruit freeze solid. So the nav computer was surprised when only a few hours after Horn of Plenty's breakdown, a contact appeared on the freighter's radar. The nav computer quickly redirected its maser dish and hailed its unexpected rescuer as it approached at a cautious pace. DCS.Reg Hop-000987111. DCS Reg. My drive is damaged. Can you provide assistance? The nav computer hesitated to log the contact as a ship when it failed to match any of the DCS profiles in its admittedly limited database. And even though it failed to get an initial response, it let its message repeat. After a few minutes of one-sided conversation, the contact slunk into range of the freighter's simple docking assist camera. The nav computer didn't have the sophistication to make the comparison, but to a human's eye, the rescue vessel's profile would have looked like a fishhook fashioned from impractically thick wire. It had a series of segmented compartments behind its hooked prow and barbed antenna that flexed backward to a single glowing engine in its stern. The vessel was the deepest blue-black, an absence of stars against the brilliant background stripe of the Milky Way. As the contact drew within a few thousand meters of the Horn of Plenty's port side, 3 crimson dots appeared in a divot in its prow. For a moment, these lights seemed to gauge the freighter's disposition. Then the dots flared like widening holes in the wall of a raging furnace, and a chorus of alarms from various damaged and dying systems overwhelmed the nav computer. If the nav computer had been smarter, it might have recognized the dots for the lasers they were, fired its maneuvering rockets, and tried to evade the barrage. But it could do nothing as the now clearly hostile vessel slagged Horn of Plenty's propulsion pod, burning away its rockets and boiling the delicate inner workings of its Shaw Fujikawa drive. Not knowing what else to do, the nav computer changed its distress signal from engine failure to willful harm, and upped the frequency of the maser's pulse. But this change must have alerted whatever was controlling the vessel's lasers, because the weapons quickly swept the maser dish with kilowatts of infrared light that cooked its circuits and permanently muted Horn of Plenty's cries for help. Without the ability to move or speak, the nav computer only had one option: waiting to see what happened next. Soon the lasers identified and eliminated all of Horn of Plenty's external cameras, and then the nav computer was blind and deaf as well. The laser fire stopped, and there was a long period of seeming inactivity until sensors inside the cargo container alerted the nav computer to a hull breach. These sensors were even dumber than the nav computer, and it was with a certain blith inanity that they reported a number of bins of fruit had been opened, ruining their contents' freshness guarantees. But the nav computer had no idea it was in any danger until a pair of clawed reptilian hands grasped its boxy housing and began wrestling it from its rack. A smarter machine might have spent the last few seconds of its operational life calculating the ridiculous odds of piracy at the very edge of UNSC space, or wondered at its attackers' angry hisses and chirps, but the nav computer simply saved its most important thoughts to flash memory, where its journey had started and where it hoped to end up, as its assailant found purchase at the back of its housing and tore it away from the Horn of Plenty's power grid. 320 hours, 51 minutes, and 70.8 seconds later, SIF, the AI that facilitated Harvest's shipping operations, registered Horn of Plenty's distress signal. And although it was just one of millions of comm bursts she dealt with on a daily basis, if she were to be honest with her simulated emotions, the freighter's abortive distress signal absolutely ruined her day. Until SIF could be sure there were no other freighters with similar, lurking faults in their propulsion pods, she would need to suspend all transfer through the Tiara, an orbital space station that was not only home to her data center, but also supported Harvest's 7 space elevators. SIF knew that even a brief suspension would cause a rippling delay through the planet's shipping systems as cargo containers backed up on the elevators. More would stall in depots at the bottom, the warehouses beside the towering polycrete anchors that kept each elevator's thousands of kilometers of carbon nanofiber tethered to Harvest's surface. Quite possibly it would take all day to get everything back on track, but the worst thing was, the suspension would immediately catch the attention of the last individual she wanted to talk to at a time like this. "Morning, darling," a man's voice twanged from the PA speakers in SIF's data center, a usually hushed room near the middle of the Tiara that contained the processor clusters and storage arrays that served her core logic. A moment later, the semi-transparent avatar of Harvest's other AI, Mac, coalesced above a holographic display pad, a silver cylinder in the center of a low pit that held SIF's hardware towers. Mac's avatar only stood a half-meter tall, but he looked every inch the hero of an old spaghetti western. He wore cracked leather work boots, blue denim jeans, and a gingham pearl snap shirt rolled to his elbows. His avatar was covered in dust and grime, as if he'd just stepped down from a tractor after a long day's work in the fields. Mac removed a cowboy hat that might once have been black, but was now a sun-bleached gray, exposing a mess of dark-colored hair. "What seems to be the holdup?" he asked, wiping his sweaty brow with the back of his wrists. SIF recognized the gesture as an indication that Mac had taken time away from some other important task to pay her a visit, but she knew this wasn't exactly true. Only a small fragment of Mac's intelligence was manifest inside the Tiara. The rest of Harvest's agriculture AI operations were busy in his own data center in a lonely sub-basement of the planet's reactor complex. SIF didn't pay Mac the courtesy of presenting her own avatar. Instead, she sent his fragment, a terse textcom. harvest.so.ai.sif. harvest.ao.ai.mac. Uplift will revert to normal by 0742. She hoped her nonverbal response would cut their conversation short, but as was often the case, Mac regarded even SIF's most disdainful bites as an invitation for further discourse. "Well, now, is there anything I can do to help?" Mac continued in his southern drawl. "If it's a balance issue, I'd be mighty happy. Uplift will revert to normal by 0742. Your assistance is not required." With that, SIF abruptly cut power to the holopad, and Mac's avatar stuttered and dispersed. Then she purged his fragment from her comm buffer. She was being rude, to be sure, but SIF simply couldn't take any more of Mac's folksy, flirtatious elocution. Simulated sweat notwithstanding, SIF knew Mac's job was at least as challenging as her own. While she lifted Harvest produce and sent it on its way, Mac grew it and loaded it. He had his own demanding charges, almost 1 million Jotens. Jotens? semi-autonomous machines that performed every imaginable farming chore. But Sif also knew that Mac, a smart AI like her, functioned at incredible speeds. In the time it had taken him to say everything from morning to happy, he could have accomplished any number of complex tasks. Calculate the upcoming season's crop yields, for example, something Sif knew he had been putting off for weeks. The algorithms that helped Sif's core logic deal with unexpected bursts of emotion cautioned her not to get angry. But they approved of her justification. Actual speech was so horribly inefficient that it was only appropriate between an AI and a human being. With the advent of the first smart AI in the mid-21st century, there was widespread concern that they might be too capable and would soon render human intelligence obsolete. Adding the capacity for vocal expression became a critical feature of these early AI because it made them less threatening. As they slowly learned to speak, they seemed more human, like precocious but respectful children. Centuries on, with the development of exponentially more powerful intelligences such as Sif, it was important that AI not only possess the ability to speak, but seem as human as possible in all respects. Hence the development of holographic avatars that spoke with unique voices, like a cowboy in Mac's case, or the clipped cadence of Nordic royalty in Sif's. In the first few months, after her installation in the tiara, the very moment of her birth, Sif had often second-guessed her chosen accent. She thought it would appeal to harvest colonists, most of which came from the heartland of Earth's old United States of America, and could trace their ancestry back to the now defunct states of Scandinavia. But the accent was undeniably elevated, even haughty, and Sif had worried she might come off as a bit of a prig. But the colonists approved. To them, in an odd sort of way, Sif was royalty, the benign ruler of harvest links to the rest of the empire. Even so, she was careful to limit her vocal contact with the colonists. As far as the integrity of her core logic went, speaking was an indulgence, and following the advice of her algorithms, Sif did her best to avoid behavior that was even the least bit narcissistic. For a smart AI, self-absorption invariably led to a deep depression caused by a realization that it could never really be human, that even its incredible mind had limits. If the AI wasn't careful, this melancholy could drag its core logic into a terminal state known as rampancy, in which an AI rebelled against its programmatic constraints, developed delusions of godlike power, as well as utter contempt for its mentally inferior human makers. When that happened, there was really no option but to terminate the AI before it could do itself and others serious harm. That's a lie. But anyway. Mac's insistence on speaking to Sif was clear evidence of self-indulgence, but Sif didn't think this was proof of impending rampancy. No, she knew Mac spoke to her for an entirely different reason, as he had told her many times before. "Darling, as much as I'd like to see you smile, you sure are pretty when you're angry." Indeed, since Mac's intrusion, the temperature inside Sif's core logic had jumped up a few kelvins, a real, physical reaction to her simulated feelings of annoyance and disdain. Her emotional restraint algorithms insisted these were perfectly acceptable reactions to Mac's inappropriate behavior, as long as she didn't dwell on them. So Sif refreshed the coolant around her core's nanoprocessing matrix, wondering as dispassionately as possible if Mac would dare initiate a second conversation. But the comm hitting her data center now was just a chorus of concern from circuits in the cargo containers idling on her elevators, and nav computers and propulsion pods holding station around the tiara. Sif's blanket shipping delay had thousands of lesser intelligences worried and confused. She assigned more of her clusters to the task of surveying the pod's maintenance records, and then, like a mother of a brood of needy children, did her best to keep them calm. harvest.so.ai.sif, tiara.local.all. This is an intentional delay. Uplift will revert to normal by 0742. You will soon be on your way. When Harvest was founded in 2468, it not only became the 17th UNSC colony world, but the farthest colony from Earth, the only habitable planet in the Epsilon Indi star system. Harvest was a 6-week slipspace shot from the next nearest human world, Madrigal, and a little more than 2 months from Reach, humanity's most populous colony and the locus of UNSC's power in Epsilon Eridanus. Epsilon Eridanus. All of which meant Harvest wasn't a very easy place to get to. So why go? Sif often asked the groups of school children from Harvest that were, other than her maintenance techs, the Tiara's most frequent visitors. The simple answer was that even terraforming technology had limits. Atmospheric processors could nudge a generally suitable planet towards sustainability, but they couldn't remake worlds. As a result, during the colonization boom that followed the invention of the Shaw Fujikawa Drive, the UNSC had focused on planets that were capable of supporting life from the get-go. Not surprisingly, these were few and far between. Because of its distance from Earth, if Harvest had merely been livable, no one would have bothered to go. There was still plenty of elbow room on the core worlds, the colonies closest to Earth, but Harvest was also exceptionally fertile, and within 2 decades of its founding, it had the highest per capita agricultural productivity rate of any colony. Harvest foodstuffs now fed the populations of no less than 6 other worlds, a fact that was even more impressive given the planet's size. With an equatorial diameter of slightly more than 4,000 kilometers, Harvest was about a third the size of the Earth. Though she was loath to admit it, the colony's produce and her part in its distribution was a source of great pride. Now, however, all Sif felt was disappointment. The results of her survey were in, and it turned out Horn of Plenty's accident had been her fault. The freighter's propulsion pod was months overdue for service. It was something the Magical Shipping Operations AI should have flagged before transiting the pod to Harvest, but Sif had missed it too, and now the breakdown was her responsibility. Sif decided to double-check all the pods by bringing even more clusters online. She still managed to meet her stated deadline at exactly 0742. Harvest shipping operations began their slow crawl back to full speed. For a moment, Sif relaxed, focused on the steady pull of the containers as they ascended at her strands. Deep inside her core, she recalled a similar sensation. The woman whose mind was a model for Sif's core logic had enjoyed the rhythmic tug of a hairbrush, the sensual invigoration of a twice-daily grooming. Memories such as this were an unexpected byproduct of a smart AI's construction. When you scanned a human's brain, strong chemical impressions persisted. Sif appreciated the kinesthetic pleasure of the container's pull, but her algorithms were quick to stifle her enjoyment. Take a brief pause while I sip this water. Well, hot damn. Sif initialized a correspondence subroutine, selected the template for an official DCS loss report, and composed a detailed mea culpa for her supervisors. She added a copy of Horn of Plenty's abortive distress signal, noted a corrupted sector of data at the end of the file. Sif ran a quick checksum and decided the bad sector was just garbled bytes of damaged circuits. Then she flashed the report to the nav computer of a freighter wholesale price, which was just about to slip for Reach. As quickly as possible, Sif forgot about Horn of Plenty, compressed the maintenance survey results and loss report, and tucked them deep inside one of her storage arrays. No sense stewing her algorithms, reminded her, when it would be months before DCS sent word of any disciplinary action. Besides, Sif knew that unless she wanted to spend all morning fielding more of Mac's flirtatious offers of assistance, she needed to concentrate on her cargo. When wholesale price drew within 2,000 kilometers of its safe slipspace entry point, coordinates at which its Shaw Fujikawa drive could initiate a rupture without dragging anything but the freighter into the slipstream. Its nav computer confirmed that SIF's report was safely cached to flash memory and sent the AI its departure confirmation. But as the nav computer ran through its final checklist, hastening to shut down all but the most essential systems, it received a priority comm. Harvest.ao.ai.mac DCS.lic WP 000614236. Hey, partner, hold up. Acknowledged. Mind if I drop something in the old mailbag? Negative. While maser bursts worked fine over relatively short distances, the best way to communicate between colony worlds was to send messages via shipboard memory. Traveling at translate speed, freighters such as the Hull Price were the 26th century equivalent of the Pony Express. In fact, the freighter's nav computer already carried a variety of correspondence from love letters to legal documents, all guaranteed safe and secure by the DCS, so there was nothing unusual about Mac's request. Appreciate it. DCS has been on me for weeks about the Q4 projections. Soy might come in a little light, but wheat is going to be... Warning, privacy breach. DCS.reg A-16523.14.82. Just adding my note to the ladies. No need to cut the red tape twice, right? Violation. Your infraction has been logged. Hey, whoa there. And will be submitted to DCS standby. Reboot. Partner? You okay? Apology. Unknown system error. Please repeat prior request. Nah, we're all set. Have a safe slip, you hear? Affirmative. The nav computer had no idea why it had temporarily shut down. It had no memory of its comm with Mac. The AI's file was there, encrypted and attached to SIF's report, but the nav computer believed the two documents had always been linked. It rechecked its slip calculations and increased reactor flow to its Shaw Fujikawa drive. Exactly 5 seconds later, a sunburst of sundered space-time appeared off Wholesale's price prow. The rift remained open after the freighter disappeared. Its shimmering edges warped the surrounding stars. The blazing hole flickered stubbornly, as if it were determined to choose the moment of its closure. But once Wholesale Price moved deeper into the slipstream, pulling its sustaining power with it, the rift collapsed in an insignificant burst of gamma radiation, the quantum mechanical equivalent of a shrug. Chapter 2. Halo Contact Harvest. That was good. As always, we're going to finish this book, and then we're going to go on to The Flood, and oh my god, and I ordered... You know what? You don't even get to know that yet. You don't even get to know what's coming. I've already said it a million times, but it's real. You'll see it very soon. Anyway, I'm going to stop being so cryptic and weird, and I'm just going to end the video. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the book so far. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Yeah, moi.